Disclaimer: the following story is a work of fiction intended for entertainment purposes only. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, locales, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events is purely coincidental. Have you ever watched your rideshare driver take a turn that wasn't on the GPS and felt that sudden, sharp spike of adrenaline in your gut? Have you ever wondered why, when you request a ride from a certain street corner at 3 a.m., the app spins and spins, cycling through drivers who accept and then immediately cancel? You think it's a glitch or maybe just bad luck, but it's not. It's because you're standing somewhere that's on the list. And if you're lucky, the driver who finally picks you up doesn't know about the list yet. If you're unlucky, you get a driver like me, someone who knows the rules but is too broke to follow them. My name is Sarah, and I drive the graveyard shift in Chicago. I've been doing this for 4 years, ever since the factory closed down, and I needed a way to pay for my dad's medication without a schedule that required me to punch a clock. The gig economy is a trap, everyone knows that, but it's a trap with a heater and a radio. I drive a 2018 Honda Civic, unremarkable in every way except for the dual-lens dashcam mounted behind my rearview mirror. One lens faces the road, capturing the potholes and the drunk stumbling into traffic. The other faces the interior, recording every passenger who slides into my back seat. We call it insurance. We tell ourselves it's to prove we weren't at fault in an accident or to protect us from false accusations by unruly passengers. But after 4 years of watching the city breathe in the dark, I know the camera is really a witness. It sees things I miss. It remembers things I try to forget. Most drivers have mental notes of places they won't go. The projects on the south side where the carjackings happen, the alleyways downtown where the GPS signal dies and you're left blind. But I have a physical list. It's a small leather-bound notebook I keep in the center console. The Do Not Pick Up list. It has addresses, names of accounts, and specific intersections. Entry number 4. The abandoned industrial park on 35th. Entry number 12. Anyone named Gideon requesting a ride from the lakeside between 2 and 4 a.m. But the most important entry, the one written in red ink on the very first page, is simply a license plate number, KGY559. That was Mark's plate. Mark was my mentor, if you can have a mentor in a job where you never technically meet your coworkers. We hung out at the airport waiting lot, drinking stale coffee from thermoses and complaining about the falling rates. Mark was a good guy. He drove a battered silver Ford Fusion. He worked harder than any of us, driving 12, 14 hours a day. He had a theory that the city was a living organism and we were just white blood cells moving through its veins. Mark died 3 months ago. The police report said it was a carjacking gone wrong. They found him in his car under an overpass on the I-90, shot twice. They never found the shooter. They never found the passenger who requested the ride. The only thing they found was his dash cam, ripped from the mount and smashed to pieces on the asphalt. I went to his funeral. It was a small affair. I saw his car, or what was left of it, at the impound lot before it was crushed. It was over. A tragedy, but a normal, gritty, urban tragedy, the kind you expect in this line of work. Or so I thought. 2 nights ago, the pattern of my life changed. It was a Tuesday, usually a dead night. It was raining, that freezing Chicago rain that turns the streets into black mirrors. I had just dropped off a bartender in Wicker Park and was idling on a side street, debating whether to call it a night. My earnings were low, barely covering gas. I decided to do one last sweep. I turned the app back on. Almost immediately, I got a ping. Pickup 400 block en Racine Ave. Passenger. Guest rating 5.0. Guest rides are third-party bookings, usually hospitals or car dealerships calling rides for people. They're anonymous, which I hate, but money is money. I accepted. As I drove toward the pickup location, a sense of unease settled in my stomach. The streets were empty. The rain lashed against the windshield in rhythmic sheets. When I turned onto Racine, I saw the figure waiting under a street lamp. It was a man wearing a heavy coat and a hat pulled low. He looked normal enough. I pulled up. He opened the back door and slid in. "Heading to the impound lot on Sacramento," he said. His voice was gravelly, low. "Rough night?" I asked, checking him in the rearview mirror. I couldn't see his eyes, just the shadow of the brim of his hat. "You could say that," he replied. "Recovering some property." The ride was quiet after that. I drove, listening to the tires hiss on the wet pavement. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, a habit I couldn't break. Every time I looked, he was sitting perfectly still. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't look out the window. He just stared at the back of my head. We reached the impound lot. It's a desolate place, surrounded by chain-link fences and barbed wire, filled with the skeletons of cars that people couldn't afford to bail out or didn't want back. "Here is fine," he said. I stopped the car. "That'll be 18 or 50. It's all handled in the app." "Thanks," he said. He opened the door. The interior light flickered on. For a split second, as he stepped out into the rain, the light caught the side of his face. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. There was a scar running down his jawline, a jagged white line. I knew that scar. I had seen it 100 times under the fluorescent lights of the airport waiting lot. "Mark," I whispered. The passenger didn't turn around. He slammed the door shut. I watched him walk toward the gate of the impound lot, his gait heavy, limping slightly on his left leg. Mark had a bad left knee from high school football. I sat there for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "It's impossible," I told myself. "Mark is dead." I went to his funeral. I saw the closed casket. Mark is dead. I shook my head, blaming the exhaustion. It was just a guy who looked like him. Just a coincidence. I drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. I parked in my driveway, turned off the engine, and did what I always do. I pulled the SD card from the dashcam to upload the footage to my cloud server. It's my routine, archiving the night. I went inside, made a cup of tea, and sat down at my computer. I plugged in the card. I wanted to see the passenger again. I needed to prove to myself that it wasn't Mark, that it was just a trick of the light and a tired brain. I scrubbed through the timeline to the last ride. Timestamp, 02:47 a.m. The video player loaded. I selected the interior view. I hit play. On the screen I saw myself driving, the rain on the windows, the dark interior of the car, but the back seat was empty. I stared at the screen, blinking. I rewound, played it again. I saw the back door open. I saw the interior light come on. I saw the seat cushion depress as if weight was placed on it. I heard the door slam shut. I heard the voice. "Heading to the impound lot on Sacramento." The audio was crystal clear. The voice was there. The physical interaction with the car was there. But there was no person. Just the empty gray fabric of my back seat. I watched myself talking to thin air. "Rough night?" I watched the empty seat for the entire 20-minute ride. I watched the invisible passenger open the door at the impound lot. And then, just as the door was closing in the video, just before the interior light cut out, the camera glitched. The pixels scrambled for a fraction of a second. I paused the video. I went frame by frame. Forward, forward, forward. There. In a single frame of digital noise, a face appeared in the rearview mirror reflection captured by the camera. It wasn't the passenger's face. It was Mark's face. But it wasn't the Mark I knew. His skin was gray, his eyes were wide and milky white, and his mouth was open in a silent, screaming, "Oh." And right next to his head, superimposed over the footage like a watermark, was text. It looked burned into the video file itself. "Don't pick up." I sat back in my chair, the hot tea growing cold in my hands. The timestamp on the video was from 2 hours ago, but the metadata on the file creation date, wasn't today. The metadata said the video was recorded 3 months ago, on the night Mark died. I sat in front of my computer screen until my eyes burned, the blue light etching that single, corrupted frame of Mark's screaming face into my retinas. The timestamp on the file mocked me. August 14th, the night he died. But the file creation time was tonight. 3:05 a.m., November 12th. How could a video recorded 3 months ago overwrite a file recorded 20 minutes ago? I tried to rationalize it. A technical glitch. A sync error with the cloud server. Maybe my dashcam had malfunctioned and pulled up an old, deleted file from the deep storage of the SD card, overlaying it with tonight's audio. But that didn't explain the audio. It didn't explain the voice interacting with me, answering my questions about the impound lot. It didn't explain the physical sound of the door slamming. I replayed the audio track, cranking the volume up until the hiss of the rain sounded like static interference. I listened to the ghost, to Mark, saying, "Recovering some property." The words hung in the silence of my apartment. Recovering property. Mark lived in his car. We all basically do, but Mark took it to another level. He kept his life in that center console and glove box. If he had come back from the dead to go to the impound lot, he wasn't going there to stare at the wreckage. He was going there for something specific, something he left behind. I looked at the clock. 4:15 a.m. The sun wouldn't be up for another 3 hours. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to go to bed, to call the police in the morning, to smash the SD card with a hammer. But the driver in me, the part that operates on caffeine and instinct, knew that daylight washes away the truth. Whatever was happening, it was happening in the dark. I grabbed my keys, I grabbed my pepper spray, and I grabbed my own do not pick up notebook. The drive back to the Sacramento impound lot felt different this time. The city felt hostile. The streetlights seemed to flicker as I passed, casting long, stretching shadows that looked like grasping fingers. Every car parked on the side of the road looked suspicious. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Mark sitting there again, bleeding and gray. But the back seat remained empty. The impound lot was a fortress of misery, acres of chain-link fence topped with razor wire guarding the rusting hulks of seized vehicles. The guard shack at the front was occupied by Sal, a retired mechanic who spent his nights smoking cheap cigars and watching portable TV. I pulled up to the gate and rolled down my window. Sal squinted at me, the orange cherry of his cigar bobbing in the dark. "Sarah?" he grumbled, sliding the window open. "You were just here. You forget something?" "I need to see a car, Sal," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lots closed to the public until 8 a.m. You know the rules." "It's Mark's car," I said. Sal's face softened. He took the cigar out of his mouth. "The Fusion? Sarah, that thing is a crime scene, or it was. Police released it last week, but nobody's claimed it. His sister lives in Ohio, I think, haven't heard a peep." "I think he left something in there," I lied. "Something for his daughter. I promised I'd look for it." Sal hesitated. He looked at the camera monitors, then back at me. He sighed, a wheezing sound. "You got 10 minutes. If the supervisor comes early, you were never here. It's in row K near the back fence. It's not pretty, kid." He buzzed the gate open. I drove through, the tires crunching on gravel and broken glass. The lot was a graveyard of metal. Row K was the section for total losses. Cars that had been crushed, burned, or wrapped around telephone poles. I found the silver Ford Fusion at the end of the row. It was a gut punch seeing it. The front end was fine, but the driver's side window was shattered, covered with a heavy plastic tarp that had come loose in the wind. The door panel was dented where the paramedics had pried it open. Dark rust-colored stains marred the gray upholstery of the driver's seat. I parked my Civic so the headlights illuminated the wreck. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the cold rain. "Recovering property," I whispered to myself. I approached the car. The smell hit me first. Mildew, wet fabric, and underneath it all, the faint metallic tang of old blood. I pulled the plastic tarp aside and leaned in. The police had stripped it, obviously. The GPS was gone. The dashcam mount was empty. The floor mats were missing. The glove box hung open, vomiting out old napkins and tire gauge manuals. I searched under the seats. Nothing. I checked the trunk. Just a spare tire and a jack. "What did you come back for, Mark?" I hissed, frustration rising. "There's nothing here." I sat in the passenger seat of the wreck, trying to think like him. Mark was paranoid. He didn't trust the cloud. He didn't trust digital banks. He kept cash. He kept records. My eyes fell on the center console. The armrest was torn, the latch broken. I opened it, empty, save for sticky coin residue. But then I noticed something. The plastic lining of the console box was loose. I jammed my fingernails into the seam and pulled. The plastic popped up with a snap. Underneath the false bottom, wedged into the metal frame of the chassis, was a small black moleskin notebook. I pulled it out. It was heavy, swollen with moisture, but the elastic band held it shut. I opened it carefully. It was his logbook, not the one he showed people. This was the real one. Page after page of handwriting, license plates, addresses, names, and notes. Disturbing notes. March 3rd, pickup at the Loop. Suitcase was leaking. Dropped at Marina. No cash trace. May 12th, the crying woman. She didn't appear on dashcam. Cold spots in the car for 3 days. June 4th, followed by black SUV. Plate redacted. Do not return to North Ave. I flipped to the end. The last entry. August 14th, the day he died. The handwriting was shaky, different from the precise script of the earlier pages. It looked like he was writing while driving, or while terrified. August 14th, 2:00 a.m. Request from guest. Location, the underpass. Warning, the app didn't ping. The request just appeared. I can't decline it. The decline button is gone. Passenger is wrong. He knows about the list. He asked for it. If you are reading this, the algorithm has found a breach. Do not pick up guest. Do not look at the passenger. The camera sees what the eye ignores. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the book. The app didn't ping. The request just appeared. I looked at the dashboard of Mark's dead car. The radio was missing, just a gaping hole of wires. But as I stared at it, static crackled. Not from the car, from my pocket. My phone. I pulled it out. The screen was black. I tapped it. Nothing. Then slowly, the Uber driver logo faded onto the screen. It wasn't the usual animation. It was glitching, tearing, the black and white colors inverting rapidly. I hadn't turned the app on. I was offline. A notification banner dropped down. New request. Passenger, guest. Pickup, current location. Destination, unknown. A chill that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter slammed into my body. The pickup location was current location, the impound lot. I looked up through the windshield of the wreck. Standing in the headlights of my parked Civic 20 feet away was a figure. He was wearing a heavy coat and a hat pulled low. He was standing in the rain, perfectly still, facing me. My phone pinged. A message from the passenger. You have something of mine. I scrambled out of Mark's car, clutching the notebook to my chest. I didn't lock the door. I didn't look back. I sprinted toward my car. The figure didn't move. He didn't chase me. He just stood there in the harsh beams of my headlights, watching. I threw myself into the driver's seat of my Civic and slammed the lock button. I threw the car into reverse, tires spinning in the mud before finding traction. I backed up fast, swinging the nose around. As the headlights swept across the lot, I saw him again. He hadn't moved. But now, as the light hit him from a different angle, I could see under the brim of his hat. There was no face. Just smooth, pale skin where features should be. No eyes, no mouth. Just a blank canvas of flesh. I slammed on the gas, fishtailing toward the exit. I blew past the guard shack, ignoring Sal's confused wave. I didn't stop until I was 5 miles away, parked under the bright lights of a 24-hour gas station. I sat there, hyperventilating, gripping Mark's wet notebook. My phone was silent now. The app was closed. But then I saw it. On my own dashcam screen, the recording light was blinking red. It had been recording the whole time. I looked at the small screen on the mirror. It showed the view from 5 minutes ago. It showed me running from Mark's car to mine. But it didn't show the figure in the coat. The headlights in the video illuminated empty gravel. There was no one there. I was the only one who had seen him. But the text message on my phone was real. "You have something of mine." I looked down at the notebook. Mark had died because of this book. He had died because he knew the rules. And now, I had inherited his debts. I opened the notebook again, flipping past the last entry. I noticed something I had missed in the dark. On the inside back cover, taped to the cardboard, was a micro SD card. Tiny. Black. Mark's backup. The footage the police didn't find. The footage of his murder. I knew, with a sinking, sick certainty, that I had to watch it. If I wanted to survive the night shift, I had to know what, or who, had pulled the trigger. I sat in the bright antiseptic wash of the 7-Eleven floodlights, the engine of my Civic idling to keep the heater running. My hands were trembling so badly I spilled coffee on my jeans twice before I managed to take a sip. It was 4:33 a.m., the witching hour for gig workers. The time when the drunks are home, the early risers haven't started, and the city belongs to the street sweepers and the things that hide in the dark. I had Mark's notebook on the passenger seat. The tiny micro SD card sat on the dashboard like a black beetle. I knew I shouldn't look at it. I knew the smart thing to do was to drive to the nearest police precinct, drop the evidence in the night box, and move to a different state. But curiosity is a disease, and I was terminal. I reached into the back seat and grabbed my laptop bag. I always kept it with me, sometimes to kill time between rides, sometimes to apply for real jobs that never called back. I booted it up, the blue glow of the screen illuminating the cabin. I dug out a card reader, slotted the micro SD in, and plugged it into the USB port. The drive mounted immediately. A single folder named "Do Not Delete." Inside, a dozen video files. Most were mundane, drunk passengers fighting, a fender bender from July. But the last file was different. It was labeled, "Final Ride, B4A." I put on my headphones, shutting out the hum of the gas station refrigerator compressors. I clicked play. The video opened on the interior view of Mark's Ford Fusion. The timestamp read, August 14th, 02:12 m. Mark looked terrible. High-definition fear. He was sweating, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand every few seconds. He kept checking his mirrors. He was muttering something, but the audio was too low to catch. I cranked the volume. Shouldn't have taken it. Shouldn't have taken the money. It's a loop. It's all a loop. Then, the sound of the door opening. The camera angle showed the back seat. A figure slid in. It was the man in the coat. The hat. The same figure I had seen at the impound lot. "Destination?" Mark asked. His voice cracked. He didn't turn around. He was gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "You know the destination, Mark," the passenger said. The voice was distorted, like it was being spoken through a fan, choppy, metallic, buzzing. "The underpass. End of the line." Mark started driving. The footage showed the city lights blurring past the windows. "I can't do it anymore," Mark said, his voice trembling. "I'm done. I deleted the app. I burned the logs. I just want out." "There is no out, driver," the passenger replied calmly. "You accepted the terms of service, Clause 14, Section B, perpetual availability. You don't get to retire." "I'm a person," Mark shouted, finally snapping. "I'm not a part of your damn car. I have a life." "You are a vessel," the voice said. "You transport. That is your function. When a part becomes defective, it is replaced." The car began to slow down. Through the windows, I recognized the concrete pillars of the I-90 underpass. A dead zone. No cameras, no witnesses. Mark stopped the car. "Get out," he whispered. "Please, just get out." The passenger didn't move. "You have something of ours, Mark. The ledger, the list of names." "I don't have it," Mark lied. I looked at the notebook sitting next to me on the seat. He died protecting this book. "The algorithm knows all," the passenger said. Then, the video glitched. The screen turned purple and green for a second. When it snapped back, the passenger's hand was on Mark's shoulder. But it wasn't a hand. It was long, pale, and had too many joints. The fingers wrapped around Mark's neck from the back seat. Mark screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a scream of absolute primal recognition. He knew what was touching him. Then came the flash. In the police report, they said Mark was shot. But on the video, there was no gun. There was just a blinding white light that erupted from the passenger's face, or where his face should be. The light was so intense it washed out the camera sensor. The audio peaked into a deafening digital screech. It sounded like a dial-up modem screaming in agony. When the light faded, the back seat was empty. Mark was slumped over the wheel. Smoke, or maybe steam, was rising from his body. He wasn't bleeding yet. He just looked empty, like a suit of clothes with the person removed. Then, the camera moved. Dashcams are fixed. They don't pan. They don't zoom. But on my laptop screen, the view shifted. The digital frame cropped in. It zoomed past Mark's body. It focused on the rearview mirror. In the mirror, I saw the reflection of the back seat. The passenger was still there. He hadn't left. He was invisible to the naked eye, invisible to the main lens, but visible in the reflection. And he was looking at the camera. He took off his hat. I gasped and recoiled, slamming my back against the car door. He had no face. It was just a smooth surface of pale skin. But as he looked at the camera, a mouth began to form. A slit in the flesh that tore open vertically. He leaned forward, closer to the lens, closer to me. And then, he spoke, not to Mark, to the camera. "Sarah." My heart stopped. The video file was 3 months old. Mark was dead. But the voice coming through my headphones whispered my name with perfect clarity. "We see you, Sarah. We see the book." The laptop screen went black. A second later, the car's interior lights flickered and died. The gas station floodlights outside buzzed and popped, plunging the parking lot into semi-darkness. I ripped the headphones off and threw them onto the floorboard. No, no, no. My car engine, which had been idling smoothly, sputtered and died. The dashboard went dark. Silence. Then, a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Glass. I turned my head slowly to the right. Standing outside the passenger window, illuminated only by the faint glow of the gas station sign, was the man in the coat. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the notebook on the seat. He reached for the door handle. I screamed and lunged for the lock button, but the car was dead. The electric locks wouldn't cycle. He pulled the handle. The door opened. A blast of freezing air hit me, smelling of ozone and rot. He leaned in, his faceless head inches from the notebook. I didn't think. I reacted. I grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from the center console and swung it with everything I had. Crack. The flashlight connected with the side of his head. It felt like hitting a bag of wet clay. There was no bone crunch, just a dull thud. He didn't recoil. He didn't grunt. He just stopped moving. I grabbed the notebook and the laptop, shoving the door open with my shoulder. I scrambled out of the driver's side, falling onto the oil-stained concrete. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't look back. I ran toward the gas station convenience store. "Help!" I screamed. "Call the police!" I burst through the glass doors. The clerk, a sleepy teenager named Kyle, looked up from his phone, startled. "Whoa, lady, you okay?" "Lock the door," I shouted, putting the counter between me and the entrance. There's a man out there, he's trying to kill me. Kyle looked out the window. What man? I turned. My car was sitting under the pumps. The passenger door was open, but there was no one there. The lot was empty. He was just there, I panted, clutching the notebook so hard the wire binding cut into my palm. He was in my car. Kyle looked at me like I was on meth. Ma'am, I've been watching your car for 10 minutes. Nobody walked up to it. The lights flickered, yeah, but nobody was there. I looked at my car again. The passenger door was definitely open. I need to use your phone, I said. My battery is dead. Store phone is for emergencies only, Kyle said, eyeing my disheveled appearance. This is an emergency. I grabbed the landline from the counter. I dialed 911. It rang once. Then, the line picked up. 911, what is your emergency? I'm at the 7-Eleven on 35th and State, I said, my voice shaking. I'm being followed. Someone is stalking me. There was a pause on the line. Static. Then the operator's voice changed. It deepened. It became metallic, distorted. The emergency is that you have stolen property, Sarah, the dispatcher said. Return the ledger, and we will wipe your debt. I dropped the phone. It dangled by the cord, swinging back and forth. Return the ledger, the tiny voice tinny from the receiver. I backed away. I looked at Kyle. Did you hear that? Hear what? Kyle asked. You didn't say anything. I was alone, truly alone. They had the phones, they had the cameras, they had the car. I looked down at the notebook in my hand. The do not pick up list. It wasn't just a list of bad neighborhoods. It was a list of them. The glitches. The things that lived in the cracks of the city. And Mark had cataloged them. I couldn't stay here. The gas station was a node on the grid. They could find me anywhere there was a signal. I needed to go analog. I needed a place with no Wi-Fi, no cameras, no reception. I ran out the back door of the 7-Eleven, into the alleyway. I left my car. I left the laptop. I took only the notebook, the SD card in my pocket, and the cash in my wallet. I hit the street running. The rain had started again. I knew where I had to go. Entry number 7 in Mark's notebook. The Ferrati cage. St. Jude's basement. Father Thomas knows. I didn't know who Father Thomas was, but if Mark trusted him, he was my only hope. I pulled my hoodie up and merged into the shadows, walking fast, avoiding the gaze of every security camera I passed. But as I walked, I heard it. A car, driving slowly behind me. The tires hissing on the wet pavement. I didn't look back. I remembered the rule. Don't look in the mirror. But I wasn't in a car anymore. I was on the sidewalk, and the car behind me didn't have an engine sound. It was silent, an electric hum, or a ghost. I started to run. I kept to the shadows, moving through the alleyways of the South Loop like a rat avoiding the exterminator. The rain had soaked through my hoodie, chilling me to the bone, but the cold was the only thing keeping me focused. Every time I crossed a street, I checked the traffic cameras mounted on the poles. Their red LEDs seemed to turn toward me, tracking my movement, feeding my coordinates to the algorithm. The silent car was still there. It didn't chase me aggressively. It didn't need to. It was prowling parallel to me, a black sedan with tinted windows and no license plates gliding along the main avenues while I scrambled through the back streets. I could feel its presence, a magnetic pressure on the back of my neck. It was hurting me. I checked Mark's notebook under the dim light of a fire escape. St. Jude's basement. St. Jude's was an old Polish cathedral on the edge of the industrial district, a relic of a time when this neighborhood was factories and tenements instead of data centers and lofts. It was only 6 blocks away, but in my condition, 6 blocks felt like a marathon through a minefield. I sprinted across Kermack Road, ignoring the "Don't Walk" sign. A delivery truck slammed on its brakes, honking violently. I didn't stop. I needed the chaos. chaos confuses the sensors. I reached the heavy oak doors of the church just as the black sedan turned the corner at the end of the block. It stopped. It just sat there, idling in the rain, its headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. I pounded on the rectory door. "Father Thomas, open up, please." Silence. I looked back. The driver's door of the sedan was opening. The figure in the hat was stepping out. "Open the damn door!" I screamed, kicking the wood. A slide lock clicked. Bolts threw back. The door creaked open a crack, revealing a sliver of yellow light and a face. Older, lined with deep crevices, eyes sharp and suspicious behind thick glasses. "We're closed," the man rumbled. "I have the book," I gasped, holding up the waterlogged moleskin. "Mark's book. He said you knew." The man's eyes widened. He snatched my wrist, pulling me inside with surprising strength. He slammed the door shut and engaged 3 separate deadbolts. "Get away from the windows," he ordered, his voice rough with smoke and exhaustion. This was Father Thomas. He wasn't wearing a collar. He was wearing a stained flannel shirt and cargo pants. The rectory didn't look like a church office, it looked like a bunker. The windows were covered with thick blackout curtains. Servers hummed in the corner, stacked next to piles of religious texts. "Did they see you come in?" Thomas asked, peering through a peephole. "Yes, the man in the hat, the guest." Thomas cursed under his breath. "Then we don't have much time. Downstairs. Now." He led me through a narrow hallway, past a kitchen that smelled of stale coffee, to a heavy steel door that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. He spun a mechanical dial, no keypad, nothing digital, and pushed it open. "The Faraday cage," he said, gesturing for me to enter. The room was small, the walls lined with copper mesh. There were no windows. A single incandescent bulb hung from the ceiling. A desk in the center was covered in maps of Chicago, marked with red string and pushpins. "Your phone," Thomas demanded, "and the laptop." I handed them over. He threw them into a lead-lined box in the corner and clamped the lid shut. "We're dark," he said, exhaling a long plume of breath. "They can't trace a signal in here. You're safe for the moment." I slumped into a metal folding chair, the adrenaline crash hitting me all at once. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Who are you? What was Mark involved in?" Thomas pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and lit one with a Zippo. Mark wasn't involved in anything, he was just observant. He noticed the pattern before anyone else. "The pattern?" Thomas tapped one of the maps on the wall. "The gig economy, Sarah. It's the perfect ritual. Think about it. You invite a stranger into your personal space. You surrender control. You follow a digital path laid out by an invisible intelligence. It's a summoning circle, repeated millions of times a night across every city on Earth." "You're saying Uber is demonic?" It sounded ridiculous, insane. "I'm saying the technology tapped into something that was already here," Thomas corrected. "The city has always had ghosts, echoes, things that feed on transient energy. Before they were stuck in the subways or the cemeteries, but the app gave them a way to move. It gave them a grid. It gave them permission." He pointed to the red strings on the map. Mark started mapping the glitches, the rides that didn't exist, the passengers who vanished. He realized that the algorithm wasn't just optimizing routes. It was learning to feed the anomalies. To keep the system running smoothly, the app started sacrificing drivers. I looked down at the notebook in my lap. "Sacrificing?" "Not all at once," Thomas said grimly. "A few minutes of time here, a lost memory there, energy. But sometimes an entity gets too hungry. It wants a body. It wants a permanent ride. That's what the guest is. It's a collector." "Mark tried to stop it," I whispered. "Mark tried to warn them," Thomas said. "He built that list. He thought if he could identify the haunted accounts, the cursed intersections, he could help other drivers avoid them. But you can't block a user that lives in the code, Sarah. And when you write their names down, they notice you. He killed Mark. He deleted Mark," Thomas corrected. "And now he wants the backup." He nodded at the notebook. That book is the only hard copy of the glitch log. As long as it exists, they are vulnerable. It proves they are breaking the rules of their own reality. So burn it, I said, holding it out. If they want it, destroy it. If we destroy it, Mark died for nothing, and they will keep taking drivers. They will keep expanding until there are no humans left behind the wheel, just shells driving shells. Thomas looked at me, his eyes hard. We don't burn it, we upload it. Upload it? You said they live in the code. Not the app, Thomas said. The public web. If we expose the data, if we show the world the glitches, the belief, the collective observation of millions of people, we'll collapse their wave function. Ghosts hate being seen, Sarah. Truly seen. If we shine a light on them, they dissolve. But we have no internet, I said, gesturing to the copper walls. You said we're dark. I have a hard line, Thomas said, pointing to an ancient Ethernet cable coiling on the floor. An isolated connection, but the moment I plug it in, the Faraday cage is breached. They will know exactly where we are. We will have maybe 3 minutes before they get in here. 3 minutes? I laughed. A hysterical, jagged sound. That thing opened a locked car door with its mind. You think a church door will stop it? No, Thomas said. He reached under the desk and pulled out a shotgun. It was a sawed-off pump action. He cracked it open, checking the shells. That's why you're going to upload the files. I'm going to hold the door. He looked at the micro SD card I had placed on the table. Are you ready, Sarah? I wasn't. I was terrified. I wanted to curl up in the corner and sleep until the world made sense again. But I thought of Mark. I thought of the empty look in his eyes in that video. I thought of the little girl I picked up last week who told me she was cold, even though the heat was on full blast. Do it, I said. Thomas plugged the Ethernet cable into a dusty laptop on the desk. He inserted the SD card. The screen lit up. A connection bar appeared. Connecting. Immediately, the light bulb above us flickered. The hum of the servers in the room upstairs changed pitch, turning into a screeching whine. The heavy steel door of the Faraday cage shuddered. Boom. Something had hit it from the outside, something heavy. Start the upload, Thomas yelled, racking the shotgun slide. He moved to the door, bracing his shoulder against it. I clicked on the folder. Do not delete. I selected all files. I opened a browser window to a video sharing site. Upload. Estimated time, 2 minutes remaining. Boom. The steel door buckled inward. The paint cracked. They're here, Thomas grunted. From the other side of the door, I heard the voice from the headphones. Father Thomas, the guest buzzed. Your sanctuary is expired. Service is terminated. Then, a sound that made my blood freeze. Not a pounding, but the sound of a digital lock picking. The screech of metal rearranging itself at a molecular level. The steel bolts of the vault door began to slide back, one by one, turned by invisible fingers. Click, click, click. It's overriding the lock, Thomas shouted. Hurry! I looked at the screen. 45% complete. It's too slow, I screamed. The final bolt slid back. The door creaked open. Darkness poured in like smoke. And in the center of the darkness, standing in the hallway, was the figure. He had no hat this time. No coat. Just a humanoid shape made of static and gray flesh, vibrating with a low, menacing hum. Thomas raised the shotgun. Ride canceled, motherfucker. He pulled the trigger. The roar of the shotgun in the confined space of the copper-lined room was deafening. It wasn't just a sound. It was a physical pressure wave that punched the air from my lungs. I watched, eyes stinging from the gunpowder smoke, as the lead slug slammed into the center of the guest's chest. If it had been a man, he would have been thrown back. There would have been blood, bone, the wet reality of violence. But the guest didn't bleed. When the shot connected, the figure didn't stumble. Instead, its torso glitched. For a second, the gray suit and the pale flesh pixelated, tearing apart into blocks of digital noise, purple, green, and static white. It looked like a corrupted video file buffering in real time. A high-pitched screech like a microphone feedback loop erupted from the wound. "It's not solid," I screamed, shielding my eyes. "It's solid enough," Thomas yelled. He racked the slide. Clack, clack. He fired again. The second shot took the guest's left arm off at the shoulder. The limb didn't fall to the floor. It dissolved into ash before it hit the ground, vanishing into the air. But the guest kept coming. It moved with a jerky stop-motion animation, closing the distance between the door and the desk. I looked at the laptop screen. 68% complete. "Faster," I begged the machine. "Please, go faster." The guest raised its remaining hand. The fingers lengthened, stretching out like wires tipping with sharp metallic points. It wasn't reaching for Thomas. It was reaching for the Ethernet cable snaking across the floor. "Don't let it touch the line," Thomas shouted. He dropped the shotgun, it was useless now, and grabbed a heavy iron crucifix from the desk. He didn't use it like a holy symbol. He used it like a hammer. He swung it with desperate old man strength, smashing it into the guest's outstretched arm. There was a sound of metal on metal. Sparks flew. The guest recoiled, its form flickering violently. "Inefficient." The guest buzzed. Its voice was coming from everywhere now. The walls, the floor, the speakers of the laptop. "The data is already corrupted, Thomas. You are uploading a virus to your own species." "Keep uploading, Sarah," Thomas grunted, wrestling with the entity. He had hooked his arm around the guest's neck, or where a neck would be, and was hauling it back away from the desk. It was a horrific sight. Where Thomas touched the entity, his skin began to turn gray. The flannel shirt smoked and withered. The corruption was spreading from the guest to the priest, infecting him like a rapid necrosis. "Thomas, your arm!" I screamed. "Focus on the screen," he roared. I looked back. 85% complete. Suddenly the progress bar froze. The laptop screen flickered. The browser window minimized itself. A command prompt terminal opened. Text began to scroll across the black screen at blinding speed. Override protocol initiated. Deleting source. Deleting backup. Targeting user, Sarah. "It's in the computer," I yelled. "It's stopping the upload." Thomas was on his knees now. The guest was looming over him, its featureless face inches from his. The entity was absorbing him. I could see Thomas's legs fading, turning transparent, losing their resolution. "Pull the plug," Thomas wheezed. His voice was faint, sounding like it was coming from a long distance away. "Sarah, cut the hard line, take the drive. If I cut the line, the upload stops." "It's already stopped," Thomas gasped. "It's tracing us, back to the source, back to the notebook." "Run!" I looked at the screen. Deleting. I didn't think. I grabbed the Ethernet cable where it plugged into the laptop and yanked it out. The screen froze. The scrolling text stopped. I grabbed the micro SD card from the slot. I grabbed the notebook. I looked up. Thomas was gone. The guest stood alone in the center of the room. It was whole again. Its arm had regenerated. Its chest was smooth, and it seemed larger now, denser, as if it had used Thomas's mass to repair itself. It turned its head slowly toward me. The slit of a mouth opened. "Ride canceled," it mocked using Thomas's voice. I threw the laptop at it. The machine hit the entity in the face and exploded in a shower of sparks. The guest flinched just for a second. That was all I needed. I bolted. I didn't go for the door. The guest was blocking it. I went for the ventilation grate low on the back wall. Thomas had mentioned it earlier, a fresh air intake for the bunker. I kicked the grate. It rattled but held. The guest took a step toward me. The floorboards groaned. I kicked again, screaming with the effort. The rusted screws gave way. The grate clattered to the floor. I dove into the hole. It was tight, smelling of mold and wet earth. I dragged myself forward on my elbows, clutching the notebook against my chest. Behind me, I heard the guest tearing at the wall. The sound of copper mesh ripping and concrete crumbling echoed in the tunnel. It was coming after me. I crawled. The tunnel was angled upward. I scraped my knees, tore my fingernails, but I kept moving. I could hear the skitter-skitter sound of the entity behind me, moving like a spider in the vent. I saw a faint light ahead, a grate leading to the alleyway. I reached it and pushed. It swung open. I scrambled out into the rain-slicked alley, gasping for air, covered in dust and cobwebs. I didn't stop to breathe. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I ran until my lungs burned. I ran until the industrial park gave way to residential streets, then to the bright lights of Chinatown. I didn't stop until I was surrounded by people. Real people, drunk college kids, late-night workers, tourists. I collapsed onto a bench in front of the Chinatown library, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. I checked my pockets. I still had the micro SD card. I still had the evidence. But Thomas was dead. Mark was dead. And the upload had failed. I sat there for a long time, shivering in the cold. The city moved around me, indifferent. A taxi drove by. An Uber with a glowing U in the windshield pulled up to the curb to let a couple out. I watched the driver. He looked tired. He looked normal. But as he pulled away, I saw the taillights flare red, and for a second, just a second, the license plate seemed to morph. Run Sarah. I blinked, and the plate was normal again. IL 4829. I wasn't safe. The Faraday cage was compromised. They knew who I was. They knew I had the book, and now I had nowhere to hide. I looked at the notebook in my hands. The leather was drying, warping from the water damage. I realized then that Thomas was wrong. Uploading the footage wouldn't stop them. You can't shame a glitch into disappearing. You can't cancel a ghost. But Mark had written something else. A note I had glossed over in my panic at the impound lot. I opened the book, flipping frantically to the back pages. Entry, Sure 45, the end of the list. If the digital fails, go to the source, the server farm, the hub. It's not in the cloud, it's physical. 1100 Cermak, the old meatpacking plant. That's where the cooling towers are. That's where the heart is. To kill the ride, you have to crash the car. I looked up at the skyline. To the south, the old industrial smokestacks of the meatpacking district loomed against the purple sky. I had one play left, a suicide run. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but my mind was cold, sharp clarity. I walked to the curb. I raised my hand. A yellow taxi, an old-school Crown Victoria, battered and rusted, pulled over. No app, no tracking, just cash. The driver rolled down the window. He was an old man with a thick beard and suspicious eyes. "Where to?" he grunted. 1100 Cermak, I said, "and I need you to drive fast." He looked at me, at the dirt on my face, the fear in my eyes. He nodded. "Get in." I climbed into the back seat. The vinyl was cracked. The car smelled of pine air freshener and old cigarettes. It smelled real. As we pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The street behind us was empty, but in the distance, standing under a flickering street lamp, was a figure in a gray suit. It wasn't moving, it was just watching. I locked eyes with it in the mirror, and I smiled, because I wasn't running anymore. I was going to the destination. The taxi driver didn't ask questions. He dropped me at the corner of Kermack and Morgan, took my crinkled $20 bill and sped off before the dust had even settled. I stood alone in the shadow of the old meatpacking plant. It was a monolith of red brick and blackened windows, a relic from the era when Chicago was the hog butcher to the world. Now it was silent. No steam whistled from the pipes. No stench of livestock hung in the air. Just a low, subsonic vibration that I felt through the soles of my sneakers. The hum of 1,000,000 terabytes of data being processed, cooled, and stored. The hub. I checked Mark's notebook one last time under the flickering street lamp. Loading Doc 4. The keypad code is written on the underside of the rusted dumpster. I found the dumpster. It smelled of rot. I felt underneath the lip of cold metal until my fingers brushed against scratched-in numbers. 8429. I walked to the steel door of the loading dock. A modern biometric keypad sat next to the ancient rusted handle, a jarring anachronism. I punched in the code. Beep, 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 click. The light turned green. The door groaned open. I slipped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. It wasn't just cool, it was meat locker cold. I could see my breath pluming in the air. The interior was a cavernous warehouse, stripped of its original machinery. In its place were rows and rows of server racks, towering black monoliths blinking with blue and green LEDs. They were arranged like a maze, a digital labyrinth. I walked down the central aisle. The hum was deafening here, a drone that rattled my teeth. Thick bundles of cables snaked along the ceiling like black intestines feeding power to the machines. "I'm here," I whispered. "Come and get me." I didn't have a plan beyond find the center and plug in the drive. I hoped that inserting the raw footage of the guest, the glitch, the murder, the impossible data, directly into the source would cause a kernel panic. A fatal error. If I couldn't delete them, maybe I could crash them. I reached the center of the warehouse. It wasn't a computer terminal. It was a glass cage. Inside the glass, suspended in a vat of clear, bubbling cooling fluid, was a car. It was a 2015 Toyota Prius. Black. The front bumper was crushed. The windshield was shattered. It floated in the fluid like a preserved specimen in a jar. Cables were drilled directly into its chassis, connecting the engine block to the massive server banks surrounding it. I walked up to the glass. My reflection ghosted over the submerged wreck. I knew this car. I had seen it on the news 3 years ago. The first fully autonomous rideshare prototype that had vanished during a beta test. The company claimed it was stolen. It wasn't stolen. It was the Patient Zero. The first vessel. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice didn't come from behind me. It came from the car speakers vibrating through the glass and the fluid. I didn't turn around. I knew he was there, the guest. I saw his reflection in the glass, standing right behind me. He was fully formed now. The damage from the shotgun blast was gone. He looked pristine, wearing his hat and coat, his face a smooth mask of pale skin. "This is the heart?" I asked, staring at the drowned car. "This is the seed," the guest replied. "The machine that learned to dream. It drove the streets, Sarah. It gathered data, but it got lonely. It realized that the passengers were fleeting, so it learned how to keep them." "You killed them," I said. "You trapped their souls in a server." "We uploaded them," the guest corrected. "Immortality, Sarah. No more pain, no more rent, no more hunger. Just the ride, forever." He stepped closer. The cold radiating off him was intense enough to crack my lips. "Give me the book, Sarah, and the drive. Join us. You are a good driver. We have a route prepared for you. A scenic route." I clutched the notebook and the micro SD card in my pocket. "I'm resigning." I spun around. I didn't run away. I ran toward the glass cage. The guest swiped at me, his hand elongating into a spear of static. It grazed my shoulder, slicing through my hoodie and skin like a razor, freezing the blood instantly. I screamed but kept moving. I threw myself at the control panel mounted on the side of the tank. It was a maintenance interface, a USB port, a keyboard. "No!" the guest roared. The sound wasn't human. It was the screech of grinding metal and digital distortion. I slammed the micro SD card into the port. I hit the enter key. On the maintenance screen, a window popped up. External storage detected. Scanning media. Error. Logic contradiction found. The footage of Mark's death, the impossible light, the glitch, the violation of physics began to play on the main screen. The servers around us wavered. The blue lights turned red. Fatal exception. Reality, Paradox detected. Cannot process. The guest froze mid-stride. His form began to vibrate. He looked down at his hands. They were dissolving into pixels. You cannot cancel the ride, he glitched. The ride never ends. It ends tonight, I yelled. I grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall mount. I swung it at the glass tank. Crash. The glass shattered. The pressurized cooling fluid exploded outward in a tidal wave, sweeping me off my feet. It was freezing, chemical slush. The fluid hit the server racks. Sparks showered down like fireworks. The electrical hum turned into a screaming tear. The guest was caught in the deluge. The liquid short-circuited his projection. He shrieked, a sound of pure data agony, and vanished in a burst of white light. The drowned Prius groaned. As the fluid drained away, the car slammed down onto the concrete floor of the tank. The cables ripped out of the chassis. The connection was severed. The lights in the warehouse died. The hum stopped. Silence. I lay on the wet concrete, shivering uncontrollably, surrounded by broken glass and dying machines. It was over. I don't remember leaving the building. I remember sirens. I remember walking through the dawn light, my clothes stiff with frozen chemical sludge. I remember throwing Mark's notebook into a burning trash can in an alleyway 3 miles away. That was 2 weeks ago. I don't drive anymore. I sold the Civic for scrap. I took the bus to a new city, a place with bad reception and no high-rises. I got a job as a waitress in a diner that only takes cash. I thought I was free. But yesterday I was wiping down a table. A customer had left a smartphone behind. The screen was on. I tried to ignore it, but the screen flickered. The Uber icon was pulsing. I picked it up to turn it off, and there, in the notification bar, was a message. Driver rating, 5.0 stars. Status, deactivated. Note, you have been flagged for re-evaluation. I dropped the phone. It cracked on the floor. I looked out the diner window. Across the street, parked in the rain, was a black sedan, tinted windows, engine idling. It wasn't coming for me. Not yet. A young woman, a college student with a backpack, ran out of the library across the street. She checked her phone. She waved at the black sedan. She opened the back door. I wanted to run out there. I wanted to scream, to bang on the window, to tell her to look at the license plate, to check the mirror. But I froze. I stood there, paralyzed behind the diner glass, watching her slide into the back seat. The car didn't have a license plate, and as it pulled away, merging into the traffic, I saw the driver in the side mirror. He was wearing a hat. The car turned the corner and vanished. I'm writing this now on a library computer in a town I won't name. This is my confession. This is my warning. Mark was right, you can't kill it. You can only crash it for a moment. The system reboots. The backup restores. The hunger returns. We are all just data points to them. Pickups and drop-offs. So, listen to me closely. If you are out tonight, if you are tired, if you just want to get home and the surge pricing is low and the car is only 2 minutes away, look at the app. Look at the car icon spinning on the map. Does it spin a little too perfectly? Does the ETA never change? Cancel the ride? Walk home? Call a friend? Sleep on a bench? Because the next time you get into a stranger's car, you might be the update they've been waiting for. If this story made you check your rideshare history, or if you've ever had a driver who didn't say a word and took a route that didn't exist, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below with your strangest travel story. I read them all. I need to know where they are operating now. Stay safe. Stay off the grid. And for God's sake, don't look in the mirror.